Good morning. I'm Kay Williams, Chairman of the Properties Committee, and I'd like to call our meeting to order this morning. If you are able, please rise and join me in the pledge. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
We do have a quorum this morning. Sherry, are you with us?
I am. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. John, are you with us? We do have a quorum. Item 2.01 is the approval of the minutes of March 7th. Does anybody have any changes or additions to that? If not, they'll be filed as printed. We also have minutes to approve from the March 18th meeting, which was the shortest Properties Committee in history. It lasted 8 minutes, had a one-item agenda. Any changes? They'll be approved as well, filed. That gets us to 3.01. This is the update on facilities and capital. Carl, would you like to begin?
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And good morning, everyone. Capital projects update from our last meeting to today, May 9th. The R.H. Johnson facilities has completed the environmental services maintenance yard, property fence and gates. This has been a ongoing project for over 2 budgets, just 2 phases. So now you have from Hillcrest fence line all the way up to the social hall building wall, a enclosure that completely allows the environmental services area to be contained and locked. So that was completed on 4/24. The R.H. Johnson pool deck, we had the vendor come back from Texas to do repairs, and the repairs were completed during this 2-day closure. It's unfortunate, but the vendor did fully recognize the communities and staff's awareness that we were having issues with that new deck. The deck has been down approximately 10 months, and you will notice that there's a dryness to it, an unraveling of some of the rubber. The vendor has been quite stand up about it and recognizes that they have an issue in their resin program. Our pool and one other pool that they did for another customer in Nevada, due to seasonal influences, they chose to use a different resin, and they are noticing that they're having a failure in that. So we did receive a letter from them explaining that they would be doing everything in their power to replace that deck. That letter had a little bit more language than the general manager and staff liked, so we are going for a second draft to make sure that there's no ambiguity in that letter and get a direct line to a plan for replacement. This is important because we are interested in their successes and their product and would like to move forward with the Palm Ridge projects that are in the fiscal year 24-25 budget to be approved. So with that being said, we have positive thoughts on how this is going to proceed, and more to come in the next few weeks. So over at Kuntz, the Kuntz softball field has a yearly field maintenance agreement with the rec centers and the club, and we perform the yearly maintenance for that field. That, just as a reminder, that's always a 50-50 cost split between the club and the rec centers. So that was completed. Over at Beardsley, the Clay Club flooring project is getting, the whole room is getting a new epoxy floor. That project is in progress. Tomorrow, facilities maintenance and facility ops will be breaking down the room of all the equipment, storing it in multiple locations in the Beardsley campus area so that it's protected. And next Monday, the flooring vendor will arrive to start the project, and it's approximately a 30-day closure Doesn't take that long to do the flooring, but it takes a solid week after the flooring's done to dissipate the smell of an epoxy floor. So little time for drying and get the smell out of the room. And then over at Desert Trails, the Pro Shop patio shade canopy project was started on 4/10. The expansion is complete, so all the landscaping area components were removed. The area was graded. A footing system for a future shade canopy was put in place, and the pavers were completed. So they have a beautiful patio there now. When we hired the shade canopy company, they made it, the low bid came in very clearly that fabrication would take at least 10 weeks. So we expect install around the end of July for the shade canopy, and then that project will be 100% complete. The same Pro Shop has a small storage area in between the end of the building's garage and the patio, and we are putting, we have awarded a vendor to put a metal shade structure over the top of that so that it could be a more secure and give the golf ops opportunity to store things protected out there like we have virtually at all of our other rec center, Pro Shops. And that completes my update for May.
Anyone on the committee have any questions of Carl?
Carl, thank you. Thank you for the update and the thoroughness, as always. Just on the R.H. Johnson pool, I asked a similar question at the GM ops meeting, but different forum here. So the plan, as I understand it, is we're working currently with the vendor. We do have plans for doing a similar project at Palm Ridge. And I believe the current thought is to get resolution in terms of what the vendor is going to do with regard to R.H. Johnson before we actually enter into the work at Palm Ridge. Am I correct in that? Or what is the plan there with the vendor and making sure we don't run into the same problem at another facility?
So again, we need a guarantee from the vendor that they are going to stand behind their product on the R.H. Johnson pool deck before we do any awardance to the Palm Ridge deck. We need a clear defined letter that says that they're going to tear out, replace with new, and that that commitment stands after a prolonged period, meaning we would like their services still at Palm Ridge and not close two pools at one time. So we would like to move forward with Palm Ridge project with that vendor and know that as soon as Palm Ridge is done, relatively shortly after that, go into the R.H. Johnson and close that down, tear that deck out, redo it, and make sure all parties agree so that we don't have two pools closed at the same time.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience for Carl? Russ, you're up.
Good morning. So we finally finished Palm Ridge. It is done being painted. We will be going back and repairing the bird damage around the upper sections of the aquatics building before we call it fully completed, but that's where Palm Ridge stands at the time. We also completed the groundwork for the Coons, over at the Coons for the storage containers for woodworking and Train Club. The Train Club has already had theirs delivered and set in place. Thanks to Environmental Services for the assist as they had to cut a wider drive through the pathway through there. And then we painted the interior of the restaurant and other minor repairs during the transition between Memos and Pete's Cafe prior to him opening, and got them all set up. So that completes my report.
Any questions for Russ?
Russ, I just would like to call out the painting on Palm Ridge. I know it's been a long project, but I also appreciate that you guys took that on at a significant positive impact to the community, both in cost and also then the physical appearance of the building. So kudos to the team who did that, and we really appreciate it. Nice job.
I will pass that along.
Any other comments from anyone else? Any questions or comments from the audience for Russ? I have a comment, surprise, surprise, right? I want to take this opportunity to thank Russ and Carl for how great they've been to work with all year. We started in October. We got them out and early and started at 6:45 a.m. for 6 Wednesday mornings. Nobody complained, at least not too much that I heard. So thank you guys for another good year of working with the committee here. And it's always a pleasure to work with you, and you've done a really good job and been there for us on the spur of the moment when a call would come in and say, what about this? And so I just wanted to let you know how much you are appreciated.
Thank
The
you.
check's in the mail.
Thank you.
That takes us to 4.01, the summer 24 capital project schedule details. Carl, you're up again.
Thank you. This is always a good time to remind the committee and the community members. Project planning is difficult. We have a split season at the rec centers. Our best seasons are low season, and low season generally starts, at the end of April and continues through our September, October time range. But generally, the budget isn't approved until late into the spring season. So next year's capital projects generally do not get an opportunity to be fully awarded until July 1st. And you can see that, some of these major projects, it's a task to get commitments from vendors knowing that they're not going to either get a deposit until July 1st, but yet I'm asking them to be on the schedule for July 1st or reasonably after the 4th of July holiday. So this schedule reflects the project manager's best forecasting for a whole year's worth of projects that we assume will get approved on May 23rd by the governing board. So again, that's one step that needs to be finished first. May 23rd is governing board approval of a budget. And then, like I mentioned, July 1st is the first time that the staff can have funds released for actually paying for projects or deposits. My list here also only incorporates the things that I'm managing, so you'll notice that there's no golf in here, and there's no items that were on the budget that are just simply purchases like equipment or a vehicle or anything like that. So in majority, these projects are the tentative dates for things that would affect our community, and you'll see projects. Number one, you'll see that there's each year sometimes there's carryover projects from a previous budget, and sometimes those carryover projects are from budgets 2 or 3 years ago. You'll notice that the green items on this list are active or awarded projects that are in progress. So we are continuing to work with the vendor to have the community offsite walls on R.A. Johnson Boulevard painted. That is going much slower than we'd like. The vendor has been challenged with busyness, so we're working through that. As I mentioned, the Clay Club flooring project begins tomorrow. Moving on through Desert Trails roofing project. And then I have a long-standing project that we've been working with an architect and Maricopa County to solve some dead-end streets that have a really, for lack of better terms, terrible-looking gated fences, cyclone fences. Our hopes was to have that fully mason block walled off, and the funds are there for it. But County Flood Control District and McDOT, the Transportation Department, are not making this project easy. Russ and I just keep continuing to push with county, and otherwise the resolve will be replacing the gates with more heavily bolstered gates as opposed to the cheap cyclone ones. So more to come. That project is always being worked on between us and county. Again, the Pro Shop patio structure, Desert Trails, just waiting on the canopy. So the next carryover project kind of kicks off the season for the Palm Ridge closures that I'd like to stress, and I think we put out PR to make the community aware that in the months of June, July, August, and maybe leading up into September, Palm Ridge will have some significant impact in this year's projects where other areas will not be. We have a carryover project of the wainscoting at from COVID to just about 1 year ago, most tile components, I could not get the right tile for that wainscoting project in the amounts needed. Imagining all the round bullnose corners and stuff like that. So we have continually pushed that project until we finally got to a successful manufacturer supply window, and we're there. And it's convenient that the fact that we're doing the flooring projects in those pool areas, keeping our fingers crossed with the R.H. Johnson conversation. So we have yearly roof maintenance that happens starting in July. And we have our yearly hardwoods that go throughout the R.H. Johnson facility and Palm Ridge facility scheduled. And then the bulk of the Palm Ridge projects that I mentioned affect us from late June through the summer months. I do anticipate about a 3-month closure to the pools, but maintaining the walking track, the fitness room through all stages of indoor and outdoor pool work. We have a project of replacing the cardio and strength equipment. We are working with the vendors right now to get the scope of work finalized. Director Williams has asked for some assistance in looking at maybe a couple alternative pieces of equipment that I'm waiting on that information. So I'd be happy to, squeeze that into the scope and have those discussions. So once I know that we're ready for a finalized scope, then I can determine what month of that closure those pieces of equipment will fit into the schedule. So that'll be the only time the whole entire swim and fitness building is closed. There is no place to stage equipment change out, so we need the lobby. So at that point, for a few days, we'll close the lobby and do the equipment change. And by that time, I assume all the pools will be done for reopening. The other key point is we have some partitions in the restrooms. I'm not sure exactly what the lead times for those partitions are, so my best laid plans are to have those partitions available during these closures and get that changed out. And then we're going to move on, as you see throughout the schedule. The next phase is other areas of the RCSCW community. So we have Palm Ridge Courts resurfacing. We have R.H. Johnson pickleball courts for resurfacing. We have R.H. Johnson tennis courts for resurfacing through the summer. It will take a long time for the pickleball monitor station at Palm Ridge to arrive. There's a long lead time on that, so that might fall into the summer categories, but it could fall into the fall. No effect to pickleball. And we kind of wrap up our summer season working in on flat roofs throughout the community, both at R.H. Johnson and Palm Ridge. Some work in and around R.H. Johnson for member services awnings. But the next key point that I'd like to make is we have the deferral of funds for the discussion of minimum wage. So if the minimum wage increase to $18 does get decided that it will hit the ballot in July, I have a deferral of those funds for like seal coats for all of our parking lots until at least November. And then if the minimum wage increase fails in November, I have the release of funds to do seal coats throughout the rest of the season. And you'll notice per the schedule, they pretty much get pushed till April of 2025, just to make sure that we actually do have the funds. And if it's a yes vote on the wage increase, these projects won't be done at all until a future date in another budget. So, and then we'll finalize out the production year, project year in 2025 with two of the largest other projects, and that would be the Sports Pavilions Lizard Acres pub renovation and the Silvercraft project. I will tell you that the Silvercraft project is still pressured by the unknown availability of a cabinet contractor. So best laid intentions, I had that vendor. They're not responding very well. So as the season goes by through the summer, I'm working my tail off to find us the right vendor for that project. So More to come when we hit September, and you'll know an update on that, okay? So that pretty much concludes the whole year in this tentative schedule, and I'd be happy to answer any projects, any questions about these projects for scheduling.
Anyone have any questions? John?
I have several. Thank you, Carl. First one is, could you repeat and maybe clarify a little where the line is on the projects that might be delayed related to the minimum wage effort? I wasn't.
Go to page 2.
Yeah.
And you'll see an awarded in progress
Okay.
column, awaiting minimum wage results, and that includes
Okay.
the Grandview Pro Shop, Beardsley Arts and Crafts parking lots, Beardsley Aquatics parking lot, Trail Ridge Pro Shop parking lot, and the R.H. Johnson parking lot number 3.
And the rest of them are, if you will, safe.
That's correct.
okay.
There are other impacts, but again, they're not necessarily construction purchases.
Okay, great. Thank you. The second question has to do with the Palm Ridge, the pool portions of that, of a collection of projects. There's a couple, if you will, constituents that use the pool area. There's the walking pool, and the swimming pool. Is it possible to have one of those pools open while the other side is being done, as opposed to shutting all of the pool area down? I'm not sure about odor transfer and staging the materials and so forth, but they're two separate groups. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine this construction scheduled by me and the vendors. I have a vendor handling a wall tile project at the indoor pool that has to be completed before the indoor surface gets done. As an efficiency to the vendor from Texas arriving to do a pool deck, at the same time the wainscot tile project indoor pool is being demoed, re-sheetrocked, tile installed, they will be grinding down the exterior pool deck. The other vendor from Texas will be prepping that surface, putting the rubber down, and as soon as the wainscot is done, they will come inside and do the flooring for the inside. So I do not have the means of keeping one pool open.
Okay, thank you. Just a question.
You're welcome.
All righty, thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience?
It's Chris Waller, 1405558. The question is a little bit of a concern. There was a lot of odor at R.H. Johnson, and it's an outdoor pool. Is there a game plan, or do they have experience with an indoor pool that large at Palm Ridge? How long it might take to dissipate that odor?
Best decision for that pool is doors will be wide open during the project for the comfort of the installers, and doors and fans will be open as soon as the project is done for the airing it out. But part of the deal with that project, it's kind of like the Clay Club flooring. It comes with an odor for a season, and there's no way of mitigating that. I mean, mothballs and bowls of vanilla extract, is my mom's old way of doing it, but that sure would take a lot of it,
They've done indoor pools, so?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the audience?
Good morning, Cliff Swan, CFO. Hey, just wanted to clarify the answer to John's question regarding contingency, the items on contingency. And I realized we wouldn't start it until, based on the schedule, April of 25, but the Sports Pavilion Lizard Acres is also on the contingency plan. So if 18 goes into effect in January, that will not get done.
Thank you for the clarity.
Do we have any questions online, Alan?
We do, and this is from Gary Bach, 135435. It's in reference to the pools. He says, I know summer has less residents in Sun City West, so that is when pool repairs are done, but is it possible to do pool updates during winter when maybe less people are using pools due to colder weather?
I'm going to say that the history for the rec centers and capital project planning has been low season is the best opportunity so that the most of our members are not inconvenienced. And we have at least 4 other pool environments for you to enjoy, both indoor and outdoor. And that is the program we're going to continue with.
Any other questions? Okay. Carl, thank you for bringing us up to date. We know that this is not something cast in concrete, pardon the pun, but we realize that you'll do the best you can to accommodate as many of our residents as we can. But you're right, we do have other alternatives, and so it's not like that's the only place in town where they can go cool off in the summer.
And my last comment about Palm Ridge is just be prepared in case, for whatever reasons, the schedule gets bumped by approximately 30 days based on the information we've already put out to the community. There's a lot of things that kind of put the handcuffs on, and that's approval of budget, release of funds, and the vendors actually being okay with getting me on the schedule without a deposit. So it's a, there's a lot of bartering and trading going on to get that resolved.
I do have one other question, Carl. When we did the walkthrough, and the most recent one as far as the resurfacing of pickleball and tennis courts, we talked about trying to be efficient as we could, doing them back to back to back so we didn't have to bring the vendor and all the equipment back in. Are we still looking at trying to do that?
Yes, so very fortunate for us. We had 3 really good bids from our vendors. Our long-standing vendor that did court resurfacing actually did not win this season. So we have a new vendor that we got a very good value. They are one of the largest Arizona sports court surface builders. And they are new to us, so it was a new vendor setup, but I am fully aware of their work. They have been competing to get in our business for a long time for other projects, even like bocce, because they do everything sport court surfacing. So they won. Again, waiting on governing board approval of the budget. We are negotiating right now, trying to get the schedule finalized based on a lack of deposit. They would like a deposit right now. I do not have that availability by policy. So I drafted a letter of intent per the general manager's approval, and I'm waiting for a response to see if they've plugged me in. So regardless, I believe the efficiency is still going to be there. It just might be a little later if they're not willing to get me on the July schedule. But we'll go from one to another. And honestly, if for some reason they are not as cooperative as I would hope scheduling wise, I would probably choose to put R.H. Johnson's tennis courts above everything else based on condition. Russ's team solved some conditions that existed at Palm Ridge, and that has solved that, for the interim. So push come to shove, if the scheduling was going to be later than earlier, I'd probably do the 16 courts at tennis first, and then go backwards and hit, R.H. Johnson, Sands, pickleball, and then Palm Ridge, Liberty pickleball. Okay?
Thank you. Moving right along to item 4.03. Let's go with 402. This is policy C03, Standing Committee of the Board. We have a couple of variations for you. The one variation was approved recently, and some of you maybe heard about the discussion about allowing more new people to get involved on standing committees. And so after much discussion at the governing board meeting, we're proposing that the length of time that anyone can be on a standing committee is 3 years, And then they must stand down for at least 1 year before they can apply to be on another committee. Part of the reason for this is the fact that we've come out of the dark ages and we've automated a system where more people can apply to be on standing committees. And in the last 2 years, that has brought out a lot larger number of people who have expressed interest. Just to give you an example, last year, we had 47 people that applied that they wanted to be on this committee. We've never had those kind of numbers before. Budget and Finance had the same kind of response. So the intent is to get some new eyes and some different folks on our standing committees starting this fall. So we thought that was pretty well settled, but now we also have a draft of additional change to it, and I want to read to you what that change is. Under 2.2.1, any period or partial standing committee service during a 1-year period will count as a full year of service. One of the questions that had come up was, well, what if I was selected to be on a standing committee and I attended the first meeting in September, but then I got sick, but I came back in May, so I really was only on it 2 months. No, that's not the way it's going to work. That's going to constitute a year, because you were appointed for that year. So that's the change that's coming up for further discussion, upcoming with the governing board in their next meeting. Any questions from the committee about this change? Jack, would you like to make any comments on this, since you're in the audience?
Yeah, actually I would. There's one typo on there that has not been addressed. In 2.2, it should say a maximum of three consecutive years on any governing board standing committee. The word one should be taken out. Oh, okay, okay, great. But that change will be coming through as well. Thank you, Karen.
On any?
Yes, it's
That's
instead
the
of
change,
saying
the
any
word.
one,
Yeah.
it'll be any governing board standing committee.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any other comments from the audience? As mentioned, this will be coming up for a vote by the board. So that, as far as our committee wrap up on 4.03, I was blessed with the best bunch in the whole world to be on this committee this year. Some of you I've had the pleasure of working with, and I will shed tears that the fact that there'll be no more Tom Jones, there'll be no more Sherry Jones, there'll be no more Nancy Hunt when this goes into effect. So whoever is in charge of the Properties Committee come the fall, they will be selecting new members to fill these slots. But you guys have done a bang-up job. I really appreciate all of your efforts and your commitment and your caring about what happens with all of our amenities. So just saying thanks, you've done a great job. Some of you may travel, but know that you are always welcome to attend. Even if you're driving your motorhome across country, you can sign in.
That would be me.
That
I
would
got
be-
kicked off, so I bought a motorhome.
Yeah.
I have a way of solving this.
Anyway, but thank you so much. I do appreciate all you've done. It's been great. So any other committee comments? 501. Alan,
Okay, I think it would be also very appropriate for us to thank you.
thank you. Not
You-
necessary.
You have been awesome as our chair, despite your 6:30, 6:45 walkthroughs. But at any rate, we appreciate all of your effort on behalf of the committee, and I also join you in thanking the rest of my peer members up here as well. But thank you for your work as chair.
Thank you, Alan.
Yes, Kay. Me. Oh, what's his name? And he cut me off before I could go first, so.
That was the plan.
That was the plan. But thank you so much for leading this and in the past, leading the properties in your diligence and going through every nook and cranny of the rec centers and taking it to heart and making sure it's in the best interest of the residents. So thank you again.